The following teaching is possible thanks to the friends and partners of Spirit and Truth Fellowship International.
As Francis said, and as we'll be looking at in the scripture in just a little bit, Caesarea became the seat of all the Roman administration. It's interesting because we, as Christians, we get so oriented, Jerusalem. It's hard to imagine that Jerusalem isn't the center of everything, but it wasn't. Caesarea was the Roman capital of Judea, not Jerusalem. And when we know from the Roman records, of course, that Pontius Pilate was the Roman procurator from 26 to 36 AD. But as we look in Israel all around for what we call material culture is something that you can actually touch. Is there any material culture that allows us to say, yes, Pontius Pilate was here, this is a replica, not the real thing. This is a replica, not the real thing, but it's an exact replica of a monument that was found with Pilate's name on it, and you can see here Pilatus, Pilatus, and that's Pontius Pilate. So this became the only piece of material culture that let us know that Pilate was indeed here. This is where his residence was. This is a tomb from the time of Christ, and this is the actual rolling stone. This was uncovered when they widened the road. Watch out, don't back up. Hey, the road's right behind it. When they widened the road, they found this tomb. This dates from the time of Christ. Notice that the tomb door would be pretty narrow, pretty small. And the reason for that, of course, is you don't want to carve too much into the rock. And so, just like in the Gospels, to look in the tomb, you'd have to stoop down to look in the tomb. And that's what Mary would be doing. And then this stone, although it looks small next to me, it would be very heavy to roll. And of course there would be a slight slope to it also, and that would seal the door. And that's would be the same similar type of tomb that would be at the time of Christ. Okay, we're rolling.
How am I in the cars?
Now, are you guys getting how old this stuff is? I mean, you know, in Solomon's time, this was modern construction. You know, today we're into big glass buildings and stuff. But these stones are 2,970 years old. I mean, they're coming within a hair's breadth of 3,000. Those Canaanites' gates are going back to the time of Moses. Wow. You know, so they're going back 3,500 years old, maybe even below that. And this is the real deal. Now they have specialists that rebuild this stuff, and if you look at what we just walked through, you'll see there's a black line about 4 inches wide. What's below it is original. What's above it is reconstruction. So when we're walking past this, God bless it. Look at that, 3,000 years old. Solomon, what a builder.
Okay.
You know, this place takes my breath away. I love it. You know, when you think about this now from just a geophysical point of view, we're a little over 700 feet now below sea level. The Sea of Galilee is in the Great Rift Valley, and it's interesting because there are facts that you can put together that help add to the heart of the word that we teach. When you look at the east and to the west, or to the east and to the west, then you'll see the high cliffs. And these cliffs go up some over 2,000 feet by the time you reach the tops of the mountains, and they form a valley. The Sea of Galilee is part of the Great Rift Valley that actually starts up in Turkey and ends down in Africa. And if you look to the north, it's kind of flat. right straight north, and it's kind of flat straight south as you follow the Jordan River down to the Dead Sea. And it's very important to understand that this valley literally is a giant V in the face of the earth, like I say, going from Turkey all the way down into Africa. And winds will move up and down this valley very quickly and at the spur of the moment. And that's why the disciples could get on a boat. I mean, you think, how long does it take to sail a boat across this? It's 7 miles at the widest point. It's 13 miles long. How long does it take a boat to sail across that, particularly with a bunch of hefty guys that have been fishermen all their life rowing? And yet, in that short space of time, storms could come up and nearly swamp the boat. And the Sea of Galilee is known to be dangerous. Of course, we know that some of those storms with the disciples were also caused. They were spiritually caused. They were caused by demons. But this lake is known to become very rough and very dangerous very quickly on the spur of the moment. And the reason for that is specifically because of where it sits, and because of where it sits in the Rift Valley and the way the winds move down that valley. Again, the geography of the land, what do I call it? The fifth gospel, right? If you understand about the high cliffs to the west, the high cliffs to the east, and the Rift Valley, then you understand where those winds came from. You understand that the storms that come up on the Sea of Galilee that caused problems for the disciples, they weren't the only storms around. That happens quite a bit, and the fishermen here have to be very careful for that. And they watch all the time. They're constantly watching. Now, it's a little easier now that we've got motors, because if you see something start to come up, then you can just motor on into port really quick. We just left Tiberias. You see Tiberias here? And I'll be talking a little bit about Tiberias, but as we know it, the Sea of Galilee has many names. By the way, Galilee means circuit. And if you circuit or circle, if you look on your Bible atlas and you follow the outline of the Galilee, it's a kind of an outline of a mountainous region that comes around in a circle. That's why they call this area the Galilee, the circuit. And the Sea of Galilee that we're on now would be called the Sea of Galilee because it's the main body of water in the Galilee. Sure. Then in the Old Testament it's called the Chinnereth, or as it's called in Hebrew, Kinneret. That's what you'll hear it pronounced later today, the Kinneret. And the Chinnereth or Kinneret means harp, H-A-R-P, like the kind that you play with your hand. And the reason for that is that the sea is shaped like a harp. If you look at it on a map, the sea has a heart shape. And so it's called the Sea of Galilee. It's called the Sea of Chinnereth or the Kinneret. It's also called the Sea of Tiberias. And there's Tiberias. Tiberias at the time of Jesus Christ was the Roman capital of the Galilee. It was the largest city, the most important city in the Galilee, and this was the sea associated with it, so it's called the Sea of Tiberias. It's also called the lake, and there's a word for sea in the Greek and a word for lake, and it's called both. So it's called the lake, which is interesting because it's, from our perspective, it's much more like a lake than the sea. Now, when the sun came up this morning, anybody get up before sunrise and see how you could see the other side very clearly? Now notice the sun comes up and starts to pull the water off the lake, and all of a sudden you can't see so well, but right over there you can just see them through the haze are the mountains on the east side. Here, of course, are the mountains on the west side. And so many things happened on this lake. For example, if you look where that boat is, right across from it's there to the north, right straight through there is Bethsaida. Now, and a little bit to the west side of that is Capernaum. And in these trees, kind of straight ahead where you see maybe a very white thing on the shore standing out, like a white buoy looking like thing just out in the water, that's Gennesaret. Now, if you're looking at the directions, then Jesus Christ put his disciples on the boat just on the shore of Bethsaida, and they were rowing in the night and landed at Gennesaret, and it was on that little journey that the storm came out and the boat was getting swamped. They were having problems, and Jesus Christ came to them walking on the water. So this is where some of this happened. If you look over here on the mountains of the east, and we'll be there a little later, those mountains drop very quickly into the sea, and that's where the swine ran down into the water, right over here on the east side. So many of the things that you read about in the Sea of Galilee all happened right here on the sea itself. Any questions about the sea that we can talk about?
40 meters, I think.
What?
I think it's 40 meters. Do you know how deep
Okay.
it is? It must skip a little.
The depth, 40 meters? How deep?
50.
They say 50 meters. That'd be about 150 feet.
Wow.
150 feet deep.
There are a lot of fish.
There's a lot of fish in here. There's a tremendous amount of fish in here, absolutely. And they fished at the time of Peter, and they're still fishing now. It's actually quite a large industry. Now, if you look to your to the west side, and you know, this is where I get my compass directions, because some of you are looking this way and it's to the right, some of you are looking this way, it's to the left. So I don't want to say if you look to the left or you look to the right, but if you look to the west, you'll see these cliffs, and that promontory with all the cliffs, that's called the Arbel, and that was a fortress during the war of the first Jewish revolt of 66 to 70 AD. There was a fortress there, and because of the cliffs, the Romans had a very, very hard time taking it. They finally used some wonderful ingenuity. They actually lowered down siege ramparts from large ropes from the top. Instead of trying to come up from the bottom, they actually came right over the top and then lowered things down and built huge fires and smoked out the defenders that way. Right behind the Arbel, as you drop down to the, further toward the west, is the horns of Hattin, and you can't see them right now because they're on the flat behind that hill. But at the horns of Hattin, I believe it was 1291. I could have my date wrong about that. But 1187. That's right, Francis. Thank you. It was 1187 on the horns of Hattin that the Suleiman. I can't remember his.
We talked about it yesterday. We came down.
Right. Yeah, we talked about it yesterday. Who's the guy? Saladin, that's right, yes. The Caliph Saladin defeated the Crusaders and drove them out of the central part of Palestine. That was an interesting turning point for Christianity in the Holy Land.
I see a lot of caves on the side.
Yes, there's a lot of caves up there. There's a lot of caves, and one of the things, do you remember the record of the man with the tombs? Yeah. And he dwelt in the caves? Exactly. On both sides of the lake, in the cliffs, there are caves, and people could dwell in them, live in them, and also burial spots.